This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 606. Do what works, not what's satisfying. Psuedo-Striving and Our Fear of Reality-Based Planning by Cal Newport of calnewport.com. And I'm Justin Malik, your personal narrator, reading to you every day, just like an audiobook, free of charge if you want. And today I want to mention another podcast that you should check out. Oprah's Super Soul Conversations is a new podcast from Oprah Winfrey, featuring interviews from Emmy Award-winning Super Soul Sunday on OWN that will help you illuminate your path to your best self. Subscribe to Oprah's Super Soul Conversations now on Apple Podcasts. It's going to be a huge podcast covering similar topics. Today's topic is all about learning from others who've done things you want to do, and a lot about why it is that we don't use their advice often. Let's get right to it as we optimize your life. Do what works, not what's satisfying. Psuedo-Striving and Our Fear of Reality-Based Planning by Cal Newport of calnewport.com. The Dune Revelation. In July 2009, I took a trip to San Francisco. At some point, I ended up hiking at a sand dune nature preserve, not far south from Monterey on Highway 1. What I remember about this hike is a thought that struck not long into the route. In the summer of 2009, I was 2 months from defending my Ph.D. dissertation. I had arranged for a postdoc after graduation, but found the academic market beyond to be uncertain for me and my skills. It was in this context that I had my insight. Why hadn't I systematically studied the most successful senior grad students when I first arrived at MIT? Every year, a small number of computer science students at MIT easily generate multiple job offers, while the rest have to sweat the process. What do these students do differently from the others? It's a basic question, and yet almost no one arriving in Cambridge seeks an answer. We instead carve out our paths blindly, sticking our heads up only at the end to see if we've stumbled anywhere near our destination. I ended up fine, landing a great tenure track position at Georgetown, but the 2009 version of myself did not have this certainty, and my failure to more systematically plan for my arrival on this market suddenly seemed a glaring omission. The $100 Startup. This 2009 experience came back to me earlier this week as I read an advanced copy of Chris Guillebeau's new book, The $100 Startup. In this book, Chris tackles a topic made popular by Tim Ferriss, how to build a lifestyle business in a digital age. Lots of people are enamored by the idea of having a business that requires little investment and yet supports you financially while injecting flexibility into your life. What sets Chris's book apart, however, is that he was not content inventing a bullet point system that simply sounds good. He instead systematically studied people who had actually made these types of businesses work. He started with a survey of 1,500 such entrepreneurs, which he then narrowed down to 100 to 200 that he interviewed in more detail. He lists them by name in his appendix. The result is often messier than the internally consistent, inspiration-boosting, acronymized systems of competing books and blogs, but the advice comes across with an authenticity that's rare for this topic. Put another way, Chris did with his interest in lifestyle businesses what I should have done as a grad student with my interest in becoming a professor. The only plan he was interested in was a plan grounded in reality. The big question. I'm telling these stories because they inspire an important question. Why do so few people do what Chris did? Most of us are content, it seems, to work hard and build complicated systems, but we avoid basing our efforts on a reality-based assessment of what really matters. And I think I finally have an explanation. The pseudo-striving hypothesis. Why do so many ambitious people approach their quest for remarkability in the way I approached grad school and not in the way Chris Guillebeau approached lifestyle entrepreneurship? Here's my tentative explanation. The pseudo-striving hypothesis. It's significantly more pleasant to pursue a goal with a plan entirely of our own construction than to use a plan based on a systematic study of what actually works. The former allows us to pseudo-strive, experiencing the fulfillment of busyness and complex planning while avoiding any of the uncomfortable, deliberate, often harsh difficulties that populate plans of the latter type. For example, for the aspiring writer, embracing National Novel Writing Month is pseudo-striving. It feels good to sit down every morning and throw a few hundred words on a page. But the reality of writing would tell you that getting your fiction chops to a publishable level requires a training that comes only in the form of writing for someone else, be it an MFA classroom or edited publication. You need the fear of rejection to push your writing skills. then you still need to experience that rejection time and again during the period where your skills are just starting to improve. It's much easier to sit on your deck with your MacBook and a cup of coffee and applaud yourself for your dedication. For the aspiring grad student, seeking research ideas that fall comfortably within the scope of what you already know how to do and then trying to convince other people that your work is important is pseudo-striving. Reflecting on my experience, I notice now that academia is much more likely to reward the strategy of spending the 12 to 24 months of deliberate practice necessary to master an important emerging field. This is really hard, but those who persist end up doing work with impact. For the aspiring lifestyle designer, dedicating hours to email autoresponders, WordPress widgets, and social network engineering is also pseudo-striving. It gives you lots to do, nothing is really judged a success or failure, and nothing is really hard, but you feel engaged and active. It's quite pleasant. Many of the successful entrepreneurs from Chris's book, by contrast, had a reality-based fixation on actually making real money from real people before doing anything else, be it leaving their job or optimizing a website. This is less pleasant because you might fail time and again to convince people to give you their money, but ultimately it's all that matters, so that's where your initial energy should be focused. Conclusion. When it comes to constructing a remarkable life, I'm increasingly convinced that pseudo-striving is a common trap with devastating consequences. It lulls you into a rhythm of busyness and complexity that might have very little to do with real accomplishment. I'm not sure why our instincts lead us to flee reality-based plans, but they do. The more explicitly we recognize the difference between pseudo-striving and the messy difficulty of real-world accomplishment, the better, I hope, we can refocus our efforts onto what matters. You just listened to the post titled, Do What Works, Not What's Satisfying, Pseudo-Striving and Our Fear of Reality-Based Planning by Cal Newport of calnewport.com. If you like this kind of content, or really the show in general, Oprah's Super Soul Conversations is a new podcast series from Oprah Winfrey featuring her interviews from the Emmy Award-winning show Super Soul Sunday on OWN with thought leaders, best-selling authors, spiritual luminaries, and health and wellness experts designed to guide you through life's big questions. You can listen to some of the most universal, powerful life lessons, sparks of brilliance, and aha moments featuring Oprah's interviews with such greats as world-renowned thought leader Tony Robbins, best-selling author Iyanla Vanzant, comedian entertainer Tracy Morgan, spiritual leader Deepak Chopra, business giant Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg, and many more. You want to feel better about your life, where you're headed? Then subscribe to Oprah's Super Soul Conversations, now on Apple Podcasts. How true is it what Cal said, that it's so much more pleasant to follow our own plan, especially if you have an entrepreneur mindset? You get that rush and happy feeling of creating something yourself. So it's a lot more pleasing to do things your way, even if there are hundreds of success stories before you. But there's so much to learn from people who've already walked the path. It reminds me of a website and or podcast idea I had a while back. It would simply do interviews with people who have random jobs. For example, I used to be an allocation and analyst, and before applying, I really had no idea what the job would actually entail. This was when I was fresh out of college. It would have been so useful to read or hear an interview with someone who actually does this every day for a living, so I could understand if it is or isn't right for me and then get tips on how to get the job, and also hear what the pros and cons are of the day-to-day work. Yeah, I could have probably networked and tried to find people that have that job, but I didn't have that kind of drive at that time. And hey, if you want to make that podcast or website, you're welcome to steal that idea. I don't mind. I think I'll leave it there for today. Tomorrow I have the start of a really popular article from Mark and Angel, Hack Life. I'll see you there, where your optimal life awaits.
Hey, this is Dan from the Optimal Finance Daily podcast, which is a lot like this show, except more focused on personal finance. Justin handpicks the best posts he can find from blogs and authors like Ramit Sethi, Mr. Money Mustache, and more, and I read them to you 5 days a week. So if you enjoy this podcast, come on over and subscribe to Optimal Finance Daily too. And together, we'll optimize your financial life.
You've been listening to Optimal Living Daily. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on each new episode, and head to oldpodcast.com, that's OLDpodcast.com, for a free gift as well as more actionable tips and resources to help you maximize your potential. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your optimal life awaits.